listening to the Rip Jersey Podcast with James D. Jackson.
Let's go. A lot to talk about with the NFL this week. A lot of craziness around the way. Let's talk about it, man. Eagles, Cowboys, Jets, and Lions. Let's go.
Here we go.
All right, let's go.
So, here we go.
Hotter than a hot dog stand in July.
Here's the first story of the day.
So we're going to start the show off with who I think is the best team in the NFL right now. We'll start with the Eagles, all right? Now, the Philadelphia Eagles beat the New York Giants 48-22. Okay, talk about a blowout against a team that is trying to get into the playoffs as well, the New York Giants. Now, looking at the stats and looking at, if you watched this game and saw how it went, it became embarrassing for the Giants because the Philadelphia Eagles were just so dominant in this game. And it brings the biggest question now that can anybody slow down the Eagles? Can anybody slow them down? This is not a team that we thought would be a dynamic offense coming into this year. It's not a team that we thought. At least for me, that's what I'm thinking. The Eagles in the last 7 or 8 games or so have scored 35, 29, 32, 17, which is the only outlier here, 40, 35, and 48. Okay? I mean, that's averaging at least 30 points a game throughout this last slate of the year. It seems like the Eagles are just getting better and better as the season goes on. And, man, Jalen Hurts having this turnaround that he's had in his career, this is impressive. Here's Jalen after the game talking to the press.
It's good that we prepared in a way where we've been able to execute at a high level. We just want to continue to do that. You know what I'm saying? That's the name of the game. Never get too high, never get too low. Just stay true to what's important and keep the main thing.
Jalen Hurts was 21 of 31 in this game for 217 yards and 2 touchdown passes. And he also rushed 7 times for 77 yards and 1 score. So he has no doubt been the biggest catalyst for this team being so great passing and rushing this year. I mean, they got these plethora of receivers that he can throw to, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, guys like that. But it all comes down to what Jalen Hurts has brought to this team. Because we talked about him being great in the RPO, the run-pass option, which gives so many defenses fits. It's remarkable where it's at. I think Jalen Hurts is the front runner this year. He is the front runner for the MVP. And I don't think that's crazy to say. It might have been coming into the year. I don't think anybody thought Jalen Hurts would be at this point. But he's playing so well right now. And he has this team on pace to just break records. They're just going and going and going. And it's amazing, especially with the New York Giants, who looked like a playoff team for most of this season. But the last few games or so, they've just dropped off. Like they haven't won a game in 4 games. They won a game in 4 games. They did tie with the Commanders, though, 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, they didn't lose there. But 7-5-1 now this year, and it's I think it should be worrisome for the Giants because they're sliding. They're sliding, and they got a very tough schedule coming up after this. So it needs to be pointed out that the Giants they're not playing their best. They're not playing their best. And on the other side, the Eagles are just playing outstanding. And I don't know if they can be beat so far. I don't think they can be. Although they did lose to Commanders. That was a fluke game with all the turnovers that they had. But beating them straight out, just outright at home, I don't know if it's going to happen in the playoffs. Only teams I see are the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. And let's get into the Cowboys next. Let's get into the Cowboys and what they've done.
Number 2.
So this wasn't a game that I thought I was going to have to pay attention to. With the Dallas Cowboys being one of the best teams in the NFL, I didn't think I would have to worry about them playing the Houston Texans, who are the worst team in the NFL right now. 1-11-1 is the Houston Texans record. Dallas is 10-3. They got the great run game. They got the great defense. They got the decent quarterback. Things have worked well for them so far. It's not something that you would have thought would have been a game to worry about. But I turn on the channel, and I'm watching this game, and turnovers, injuries. all that is striking the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott had 2 interceptions in this game. One where his arm got hit. One was deflected off of a receiver. Uncanny turnovers in this game. Turpin, who has been one of the best returners this year on punt and kickoff, had a rare muff punt that cost him more field position. And it didn't look well for the Dallas Cowboys, especially after that second interception that Dak Prescott threw, because the Texans were in basically like the 10 yards of the touchdown, and their defense held up. The defense, Michael Parsons, those guys saved this team again. And Dak Prescott and the boys went on a 98-yard touchdown drive with Ezekiel Elliott scoring in the final seconds. Here's Dak on that drive after the game.
And yeah, it was a great one. I mean, obviously it's the NFL. It was a tough game. Didn't play our best by any means, and we had an opportunity right there, 2 minutes left, and went and got it done. And at the end of the day, that's all it's about is capturing wins, and we're able to get this one.
And so if you watch this game and you have a bet on the Cowboys or you're a Cowboys fan, the question I think of this is, should you be worried about this performance? And frankly, I don't believe so. It's just one game. It's just one game. Teams have, throughout the season, teams are allowed to have bad games. The Eagles had a bad game against the Commanders, as we talked about. Teams are allowed to have bad games in this. So you shouldn't put too much weight on it. You shouldn't put too much weight on this loss. Well, this win that you almost lost. You shouldn't put too much weight on it. However, I think the Cowboys shouldn't get too comfortable with their resume, because this game should open the eyes of them and show them that if you don't play at your standard, you can be beat by anybody. And that's Houston Texans are the worst in the NFL. You can be beat by anybody. If you're beat by the Houston Texans, that shows you in the playoffs, you cannot have these type of mistakes, because there are going to be so much better teams than the Houston Texans in that moment. And we've seen the Cowboys fall again in the playoffs, in the first round, things like that when they shouldn't. And we don't want to see that again. That you don't want to see that again as a Cowboys fan. That would be very disappointing to the season. Let's get into the next thing.
Number 3.
All right, so the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions faced off, and it didn't start well for the Vikings. I should say that. It didn't start well, and it didn't end well either. The Detroit Lions beat the Minnesota Vikings 34-23. Now, the Vikings have had a very, very good season, winning 9 of their games, 9 of their 10 wins coming by one score in the game, coming by just one score. So basically, it came down to one final score in the game. And it's cause for a lot of people to worry about the Vikings, so to speak, like they aren't dominant. They're not really beating anybody by a lot of touchdowns. But for them, it had worked because they were winning. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson's just leading this team. But they lost these 2 games against Dallas and the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the best in the NFC right now. They lost these 2 games against them by a very, very high margins, especially the Dallas game. That was the worst one they've had this year. And so it kind of made people think they aren't the best teams right now. And this loss to the Detroit Lions doesn't make that any worse or better, because the Detroit Lions, they're better than I think a lot of people thought they were going to be. Now, they had the big HBO, deal before the season, so it kind of caused some hype for the Detroit Lions with Dan Campbell coming in to lead this group. And you had Jared Goff coming over after the trade from the Rams, and he had a lot to prove for himself as well. But the Detroit Lions have started this season 1-6, right? 1-6. That is very bad in terms of trying to make it to the playoffs and try to turn this franchise around. But since then, they are 5-1. They're like the hottest team besides the Eagles right now is in a short time span, as if you look at it just in the last 6 games. They're one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And now they're trying to do, the remarkable. Become the first team since the 1970 Cincinnati Bengals to make the playoffs after starting 1-6. And so the question, I think, is it time to start believing in the Detroit Lions? Is it time to start paying attention to them and saying, you know what? they might be able to do it. This wild card race they're in, the Lions are 6-7. This wild card race they're in, they are behind the Commanders, who are 7-5, the Giants, who are 7-5-1, and the Seahawks, who are 7-6. Right? They got to finish ahead of these two teams. They got to finish ahead of at least two teams to get into the wild card. Now, they're only like a game and a half behind these teams right now. So it's not like it's going to take an amazing run to do so. It'll take a win and a couple losses from these teams. But this turnaround has just been amazing. And here's Dan Campbell after the game.
When it doesn't go your way, if you don't learn from it, that's the problem, But if you're able to continue to learn from your errors, your mistakes, things you can get better at, then you'll always grow, and we've been able to do that. So
they've been able to do it. They've been growing and growing this year, and they've just been playing better. They've got off to a better start. Jared Goff in this game was 27-39 for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, my goodness. There were talks of people from the Lions community of should they draft one of these high college quarterbacks coming out. But, man, if Jared Goff plays like this, if he continues to play like this, what would be the point? You might even go try to get a better defender or something because he's playing out of his mind right now. This isn't just one game. He's done it the past couple of games. This team is just moving. Man. Let's get into the next one, man.
Number 4.
All right, so we'll talk about the New York Jets. Again, they come up because this Mike White and Zach Wilson deal is such a different storyline to have. It's so different that it just keeps rearing its ugly head. Now, if you watch this game, Mike White took some incredibly tough shots in this game that I thought he had a broken rib. I thought one of them were broke. I mean, the way he was hit in this game, and he came back out there after going into the locker room. He came back out and fought through to keep playing as long as he could before getting hit again. And Joe Flacco had to come in because, if you remember, Zach White isn't the second string quarterback after being benched. He is now the third string. So when Mike White went out, Joe Flacco had to come in, and it was one of the worst performances that you can put together. Joe Flacco is not looking – I don't think he's looking to be an actual, on-the-field quarterback. He was trying to be a mentor and be on the sideline and just, get his contract and help the team that way. And so having him on the field, it brought up the question, should the New York Jets at least have Zach Wilson be the second string quarterback? If you look at what just happened, Zach Wilson has already beaten the Buffalo Bills this year, leading this team. He was 5-2. Only teams he's lost to were the New England Patriots. He lost to them twice. And a lot of what happened was both of these quarterbacks, Mike White and Joe Flacco, not being able to extend plays with their legs, not being able to gain yards with their legs because they're not running quarterbacks whatsoever. Zach Wilson, to his credit, does have that ability to extend plays. And so when Mike White went down, if the Jets wanted to win, I think the best situation would have been for them to put Zach Wilson in the game. Now, but I've on this podcast, I've said Zach Wilson is sit out for the rest of the year because he needs to reset and really grasp the game of football again and see the coverages. But man, if you're trying to win games, it's not about who has a team in the locker room. It's not about who has all that. These guys will play for whoever leads them to wins. And if Zach Wilson was your best player to get you to win after Mike White went down, that should have been who was in the game. And here's Robert Saleh after the game.
Zach's ready for everything, but at the same time, I've still got to meet with the offensive staff and just kind of not reevaluate, but just make sure we finish the evaluation process and all that. So again, that's another one with regards to the backup quarterback that I'll have answers for you guys on Wednesday.
So he's not ruling it out. Mike White in this game was 27-44 for 268 yards and 0 touchdowns, but he also didn't turn the ball over. Joe Flacco was 1-3 for one yard and was sacked one time. It was a difficult process. It was a difficult game for the Jets. Very difficult. Even with guys like Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver, playing out of his mind, it's a difficult game right now. On the other side, the Buffalo Bills, let's give them credit for actually winning this game. The Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen was 16 of 27 for 147 yards and 1 touchdown. And the Bills have had so many injuries hit them this year, and they just had Von Miller go out. And I think that is kind of hurting more than initially thought. I mean, I thought this season that Von Miller was the key for them to get to the Super Bowl, because it just takes 1 or 2 sacks against Kansas City in the playoffs last year, and they were in. And that Von Miller was the guy that was going to allow that to happen. He was the guy that was going to make that happen. But now that he's out with this ACL injury, he's not coming back. I don't think he's coming back. It's worrisome for where the Bills are, because their offense, as I've said before, they're too reliant on Josh Allen to create every single thing for this offense. And if he's not amazing, it's just not getting done. And that's what happened. 20 points in this game. Josh Allen with just 1 touchdown. They got to find a way to get a better run game. Josh Allen was a leading rusher in this game as well. 10 carries for 47 yards and 1 score. Devin Singletary, the actual running back, was 8 carries for 39 yards, 0 touchdowns. I mean, that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest problem. They don't have a consistent run game. They don't have any other way to produce on offense if Josh Allen is not doing it. And Stephon Diggs can only do so much when everybody knows where the ball's going now. Stephon Diggs can only do so much. 3 catches in this game, just following Dawson Knox, who had 4 and 41. And so the Bills just can't run. And so it kind of brings the question too, should the Bills play in a stadium or a dome? Because their offense, I mean, when you think about it, their offense isn't the best for these crazy weather games in the snow and crazy winds. Because, typically that's for like teams that are very good at running and can, ground and pound and play great defense. I don't know if the Bills are in that type of category. But hey, that's all I have for you today. This has been the Rip Jersey Podcast, and we appreciate you for sticking around with us.